Hey everyone, this is Lucid. This is going to be the final episode of Garden of Good and Evil. I'm going to share some of the after-action reviews, not from me, but from the other players in the game. And I'm going to start with Zarya, who was the player who played Ryla, my main adversary. After the game was over, I asked everyone to kind of share their comments, and a few people did. Zarya wrote a very long after-action review, and I'm going to share that with you now. So I'll start. Here was his throne capital, and he has a very long kind of transcript, so I'm just going to read it for you. This was an MA game with light role-playing. The host wanted to play MA-Ermor, and we others were brave and stupid enough to join the mayhem. This was my second ever play-by-email Dominions 4 game. I made plenty of mistakes and was really in a great position most of the game. Disclaimer, this is highly subjective and emotionally filtered summary of the game. I've been known to be paranoid and negative, like most Dominions players. National choice and pretender creation. I chose Ryla because I wanted communions, magic diversity, and tools to fight Ermor. I picked the Earth Serpent because I wanted to boost expansion, and for the Earth Serpent was the only valid option, and for that, the Earth Serpent was the only valid option for MA Ryla. The other awake options are unable to go on land or risky in general. I found a Lovecraftian snake god named Setyig that I decided to roleplay. I've never faced MA-Ermor before. I knew that the nation had the highest win rate, and that they were banned in most games and were horrible to face in general. I figured that I should experience this suffering once in my life so that I could look upon my grandchildren and say that I had seen true suffering. Since this was only intermediate skill level RP, and only an intermediate skill level role-playing game, I hoped that I would not face a quad or tribless. Mistakes were made. Going into the game, I was convinced that if everyone dedicated themselves fully to killing Ermor from the start, we would not have an issue. After all, Ermor cannot be so broken that they can take on everyone else. Again, mistakes were made. Expansion. I focused on taking land provinces with my pretender, and the seas with my troops, since my troops are vulnerable to ranged attacks. I went up on land in the southeast, and found that my cap was only one province away from Bandarlog's cap. We made a deal, and took a few great provinces. I found Machaka in the northeast. He had only taken like 5 provinces by the end of year 1. I was planning to invade them post-haste. Then I found out that Ermor had taken the ultimate quad cheese bliss, and realized that I and everyone else had to kill them ASAP. I left all thoughts of fighting anyone else, first to simply kill Ermor, to prevent infighting and backstabbing among non-Ermorian nations. If I backstab and mess around with other nations, the alliance might fall apart and we would all be dead. Halfway into year 2, there were still neutral provinces on the map. I was happy since I could grab them, but I was worried that some of the other nations might not be up to the task of killing Ermor if they can't expand. Maybe there were just too few players in the game, but I ended up with 31 provinces after expansion. This might have been an issue in other games, but I told everyone that I was fighting Ermor and needed the resources to do so, which was true. Overall strat was to fort spam and build star children for research and communions. It worked well. Okay, into the fray. I fought Ermor with Bandar and Nazca, and realized that I could not kill his sacreds at all. If I knew then what I know now, I could have done something, but alas, it was hard and boring times, focused on attacking his when his sacreds were away, raiding and taking non-sacred forces. Sceleria and Machaka were the only ones not in contact with Ermor, so they fought. I took some of the provinces from Machaka in the end, and I got his death basket, since I helped him with tips and intel to fight Sceleria. Sceleria, by the way, those of you who don't know, a death basket is when people give you all your gems when they die. I don't really like doing that, but people do it. Okay, Sceleria was going to win their war anyway, but it did not. But I didn't want him to grow too powerful too quickly. I sold info to Machaka and Sceleria, by the way. I found an enchantment 40 site in the sea. This helped me so much during the game. Cheap Claymen, Enlivened Statues, Twiceborn, Eyes of the God, Gift of the Health for 30 gems each. Arcane Nexus for 90 gems. I cast Eye of the God on turn 27. My research graph looked like Ermor's army size charts, and was far ahead of anyone else's. I was also ahead on provinces, even compared to Ermor. I didn't tell anyone about that. I saw the graphs that Agartha was not fighting Ermor and was a bit pissed off, since I was convinced that if everyone just fought Ermor at the same time, we could make it. But I talked to Agartha, and he said he couldn't take Ermor. I said, yes, that's true for anyone, but if everyone attacks, we can hurt and distract him. He will be unable to focus one player, and we can take him. At the end of year 3, Bandar was broken. Sad times. Agartha finally promised to attack Ermor, but not much happened, and then Asphodel attacked Agartha, ruining my plan for a united front. I fight on against Ermor, but it's the same old story. Still, 20 plus sacreds are present. If 20 plus sacreds are present, I lose. So I raid. I'm convinced that Ermor is going to win at this point. It just is a matter of time. But I played along, and I figured it might not be as bad as it looked. I finally realized what I needed and got bottles of water and Mind Hunt. I can finally affect the outcome of battles. I figured that Ermor can cast Bless. If Ermor can cast Bless, I lose by default. So if I kill his commanders and get him to attack, and get to attack him at the same time, I can win with magic support. Some mind gains ensued, and I tried to predict where his astral mages were and stuff, but I figured it might be possible to turn the tides. Then Burden of Time. Oh no. I thought Burden of Time was not that bad, and it would just be my slave mages that would suffer, but then I saw that the population dropped in all my provinces, and something had to be done. I got gems from everyone except Asphodel. I might be slightly upset with Asphodel at this point. And I cast Dispel, with 55 gems overcast and my 40 enchantment site. It didn't work. I tried a lot of things, but always lost for his sacreds. As usual, unless I killed his bishops before battle, all I could do was raid and try to catch the commanders of Ermor while he was eating Bandar Log. I was hurting for money thanks to Burden of Time. Just killing his commanders and a few armies here and there would not work in the long run. I was bored and tired of losing, so to keep my allies and spirits up, I played a lottery. Players could send in any gems that they had for a chance to win a random item. The items were all those I had gained from my Luck 3 scales. I didn't remove good items or bad ones from the list. The odds were not in my favor, and I didn't mess around with the dice, items, or whatnot to cheat anyone. It was good fun, and I lost a few items that I might have found a use for later. But all in all, I got some gems and had some fun. I tried to get Agartha and Asphodel to attack Ermor, but with little to no success. Around turn 45, Agartha finally attacked Ermor, but it was a bit late, and Bandar was already down to less than 10 provinces. But hey, I'll take anything. For the first time in the game, Ermor's army size graph was pointing down. Ermor had beaten Bandar to a pulp, so Bandar didn't pose a threat anymore. Now Ermor went after Agartha. Agartha didn't manage to hold against Ermor and fell fast. I tried to convince Asphodel to invade, but no. However, Asphodel and I sent a metric ton of gems to Agartha to try to help him out, but it didn't do much. I'm pretty sure Ermor was going to be impossible to root out if he got a foothold in the Agarthan caves. With a daring, heroic, and silly move, I got a Star Child in and assassinated Ermor's pretender, ending Burden of Time. It was the same Star Child that killed Ermor's prophet when I first got bottles of water. This was incredibly funny, and I thought there might be a sliver of hope now. This was a big mistake, however, since Sceleria and Nazca now stopped helping against Ermor, figuring that this minor victory meant that Ermor was under control and they could just sit back. Mistakes were made. I was losing most big battles. Nazca stopped attacking Ermor. Asphodel still refused to attack, like always. Agartha was falling. Bandar was broken. And as a kick in the marbles, Sceleria decided to attack me, because he was bored with just sitting at home not doing anything. So long, and thanks for the fish. If no one else was going to do anything about Ermor, I wasn't going to do anything about Ermor. So I went on my own way, got some globals up, and went ham after Sceleria. At first, I took half his provinces in a few turns, teleporting thugs, earthquake, magic duels, mind hunt, his raiding forces, mind hunting his raiding forces, etc. But when he was down to his last 10 provinces 10 provinces or so, I underestimated him and had a few nasty losses. I had to focus on Ermor, so I was unable to finish off Sceleria. In the end, I just ate most of his lands and let him sit on his last few forts. This was the most fun I had in the game. Sceleria tried different strats, adapted, etc. I got a lot of new gems and gold income that turned me into a true superpower. In hindsight, I should have invaded Machaka, Sceleria, and maybe Asphodel earlier, taken their stuff and used what I had taken to take down Ermor. But as always, I felt that if I left Ermor alone, he would eat everyone else and win. I had a weak roleplay reason, not for betraying my quote-unquote allies. I was really gifted a really great province from Agartha in the flooded cave opening. It was like it had 5 gold generating sites and produced as much gold as my capital. I hold on to that with all I can for the rest of the game. Nothing really happened for a long while, and I was bored as usual. I hoped that Ermor would have won. Lost, or would have killed me by this point. But all that was happening was Ermor was getting stronger, and I couldn't go on the offensive on my own. Asphodel was pushing me hard, and what was left of Bandar, and it hurt my income, so I told Bandar that if he would mind hunt Asphodel's hidden preachers, I would have been... I can't totally read this part, but he would have invaded Asphodel, but Ermor was in the game, so this was not an option. Since it would give Ermor an opening to take the world, Bandar started mine hunting Asphodel's provinces so that Asphodel attacked and ate him. I got Bandar's death basket since I was such an upstanding fellow and shared in his suffering at the hands of evil. I could not see how... and that actually is a funny point. I'll step in and just say, he got 2 death baskets now so far. That means when people left, they gave him all his gems. Which I kind of expected, because he had just ungodly amounts of gems. Okay, back to his text. I could not see how I was supposed to beat Ermor at this point. He was too entrenched. I had the magic to win some big battles at this point, but I couldn't make a dent in his infrastructure. So my plan was to get Enchanted Forest, Arcane Nexus, and Vengeful Waters up in combo, and Dom kill everyone. So now I was going to have to turtle, save gems, and research. It would not work out as planned. I got a Tartarian farm up, and this prompted a series of fierce attacks from Ermor. I got flustered and lost some important artifacts for bad reasons. Ermor went into the sea, started sieging my cap, and was ready to storm it. I cast Vengeful Waters to kill his raiders and smaller commanders. I was close to losing my cap, but in the final battle I soul-slayed Ermor myself to victory. Killing his commanders and his armies went down the drain. I realized that a defensive SC was able to trigger auto-route, so Ermor's commanders would flee before his troops, killing most of the undead and all of his sacred knights. In a battle, I had a big force casting armies of lead, fog warriors, mass regen, light of the northern star, and I had 40 plus star children spamming solar rays. I could win against his piles of unsupported sacreds. So for now, I was finally able to push Ermor back around turn 75 to 80, taking the initiative. For a time, it was looking like the tides were turning. And I'll just jump in and say, yeah, this is the point in the game where he was able to kill huge sacred armies of mine that were blessed. Nazca casts Mother Oak and cancels out my Vengeful Waters. He said he didn't like me having it. I was confused since I didn't hurt him, and it was very useful against Ermor. I recast Vengeful Waters, canceling my own Gift of Health. I really needed Gift of Health for my Tartarian spam, since it ironically seems to have been the cheapest way to kill Ermorian armies. I recast Gift of Health and cancel my own Vengeful Waters again. Bad times. Beginning of the end. Nazca invades me, stating that he didn't really like Vengeful Waters and that he needs a way to cross the seas with his troops. Ironic that I dispelled my own Vengeful Waters the same turn. I was pretty sure the reason he stated were fabrication, since Vengeful Waters didn't affect him, and he had not fought Ermor for 40 turns. And it was not like he stopped attacking when I dispelled my own Vengeful Waters by accident. I had an inkling that he was just bored and wanted the game to end, or was manipulated by Ermor. I took some heavy losses and pushed back Nazca. I stole his father Ill-Earth with Enslave Mine and sieging his capital for a few turns. All in all, it was a decent fight, but now Ermor was free to invade Asphodel with everything he had, which I did capitalize on. Nazca and I made peace after a few turns, but much was lost, and Ermor and Asphodel didn't have anything. To stop Ermor. No tears were shed for Asphodel, however. Ermor was now at around turn 85 to 90, started to use these strange things called magic spells during his battles. This confused me to some extent, but it was not a big deal. He found counters to assassins, archbishops with proper gear. If Ermor cast Rigor Mortis, once I got... I started to lose big battles since battles were more about my units slowly dying while my mages killed his sacreds. It's not like my troops could kill stuff. But with relief I could win. Without relief I lost. Simple as before. Super combatant battles still won most of the time. Around turn 95, Nazca stole my gift of health, and I could no longer make Tartarians, and my old Tartarians couldn't recover from afflictions. Ermor got counters to my super combatant spam, so now I could only use them as support for armies, or for magic diversity. When Ermor used Heat from Hell plus Rigor Mortis in a big battle, I lost by default. Since battles were always going long and I won with mages, and relief will only get you so far, I could still win if Ermor fielded no or only one battle fatigue spell. I got a good bit of undead mastery, I got a good bit of his troops with undead mastery or master and slave. But if he got off anti-magic or armies of lead first, it was a problem. But the writing was on the wall. Ermor was catching up in research. I had lost most all of my globals, and it was only me and Nazca that could do anything. Nazca finally started fighting Ermor again, but it was too late. His armies didn't slow Ermor down much. The dam was broken and the flood of undead defeated army after army and took provinces after provinces. And I started losing forts. And after that, Ermor started raiding the seas. I put up Arcane Nexus with my 40 enchantment site, so I got a bunch of astral gems to play around with. But it was too late to impact the game. I cast Wish for a few gems a few times, and could do some more stuff, but 40 to 80 pearls per turn didn't change much at this point. The final nail in the coffin was Ermor casting Utterdark, so I could no longer buy units and mages. Then he cast Burden of Time. Not a big deal at this point. I still won a few battles, but when he forgot to bring proper mage support. But the legions of Ermor marched across the land and lay waste to everything. Nazca then asked me to dispel Utterdark since it was giving him problems. I had the feeling that I should have been in contact and managed my relationship with Nazca much more closely after I took down Burden of Time the first time. But I was tired after a few months of this. Ermor marches in and sieged the last of the thrones he needed. Reflections. I learned a lot this game about what spells to research, how to script combat magic, troop movement, strategy, how to play the early, mid, and late game better, what will work, and what is a waste of gold and gems. Quad Bless Ermor is very powerful. I think Lucid was simply... Quad Bless Ermor is very powerful, but I think Lucid was simply the better player. Had I known what I know now, I would have done better. I was very negative during a large part of the game. This affected things. I made some mistakes since I didn't want to spend time double checking gems and testing stuff. This negative attitude came from the fact that fighting Ermor was boring. You research and cast all the cool spells, try new fancy stuff all the time, while Ermor just sits back with the same thing over and over again, with some different scripting. Losing battle after battle is very boring, but there's nothing. But this has nothing to do with the game. My main issue was that the game took so long to reach its end. There were some ups and downs. I did win battles, and at sometimes things were looking up. But I always felt that it was just a temporary victory, and we could never do more than taking a few outlying provinces and some drained resources. It's very easy to blame others for losing, blame Ermor for being overpowered and having a cheesy build, blame others for not fighting or losing or bickering or backstabbing. I know that I made mistakes, both in terms of diplomacy and strategy and tactics. I was outplayed and outsmarted at times. I lost to a better player and I learned a lot. And there were fun and memorable moments. Maybe I didn't enjoy parts of the game, but I'm glad to have had the experience. Would I play against MA-Ermor again? Hee, nope. So that is about it. I'm about at my time limit that I put on for my episodes. I'll just say for... we had also a commentary from Sceleria. I'll kind of skim through it really quick. Okay, so for my part, from the beginning, I made some very big mistakes that would hurt me later. And that was in how I chose to spec my god. I read that Sceleria has good sacreds, the Vestal Virgins. So I built my god around having a good bless, N9, D9, Immobile Pretender. But I think that was a total misplay. In most of the game, it may have ended up being a good idea, since the truth be told, the Vestals were pretty good. But in the end of the game, it really ended up hurting me. My main game plan at first, besides Sacreds, basically revolved around two things: getting swarms of undead and researching Evocation 7 for Nether Darts. Since all my mages can cast it, and it's pretty good in my experience. The first dozen turns went well for me. I established peaceful relations with Nazca, and went to war with Machaka, and won that battle. At this point, I was pretty anti-Ermor. I've played in other games with Ermor in it, and Ermor eventually dominated the world with bottomless legions of undead, backed up by just about every super combatant under the sun. I think in that particular game I'm thinking of, he had Wish. As a result, I wanted to leave Ryla and Nazca alone, since I didn't want to interfere with them fighting Ermor. I also got Well of Misery up at some point. I don't really remember when, but it was a good thing I did, because it brought in a ton of death gems once the fighting got started. At this point, I was also in contact with Ermor, and it was sounding like he was getting beaten up pretty badly by the coalition of nations against him. I was fine with that at first, but then noticed that the only neighbor that I could realistically fight with were Nazca and Ryla, and I was afraid that since they worked together to fight Ermor, and because I was decently strong at that point, that once Ermor was gone, they would team up to fight me. And that a combination of the aforementioned boredom started to cause me to consider helping to attack Ryla. Then Burden of Time went up, and because a decent number of my mages were fairly old to begin with, it ended up hurting me really bad. I didn't have the ability to dispel it on my own, but Ryla did, so I figured that I would wait until Burden of Time went down, and just give Ryla some pearls to help him with Dispel. Regardless, once Burden of Time went down, I figured it was time to fight Ryla, and I felt pretty bad about it, and actually sent an apologetic message to him. But I also figured that it was my best chance if I did so anyway. I was a bit overconfident at the beginning. He didn't have many armies in the north, and I had no idea what magic he had. I'd never fought against Ryla before in multiplayer, so I didn't really know what to expect. My first attacks were basically large armies of undead and Hesti, and I didn't even bother to put many mages with the armies because I figured I could just overwhelm his unguarded provinces through numbers. I also neglected to build a lab in my most eastern fort because I didn't think I would need many mages close enough to deal with him. But this was an impatient move, and I ended up losing the eastern half of my empire in a few turns after that. This was probably my biggest failure in the game. I lost hundreds of troops, and a throne that would have given me access to fire magic, an enormous amount of gold and gem income. If I'd adequately defended my eastern territories with mages, I may not have given up forces and been forced into such a desperate situation. But after getting my butt kicked in the east, I started buckling down a bit, realizing that this was not going to be an easy fight in unguarded provinces, fighting unguarded provinces like I thought. I got extremely lucky and killed off all three of Ryland's early thugs. Many of those were Vastnesses, which was a great help to Ermor in this game. With them gone, Ryla lost his main raiding capability, and I started ensuring all of my own armies, no matter how small, had at least a few astral mages to prevent mind hunting. As for my big armies, I started bringing in large amounts of mages, and I used anti-magic to prevent mind control. I started having a bunch of guys casting Nether Darts to hurt Ryla. Overall, this was enough to keep me alive, but was very inefficient. I started winning some battles, but always at an enormous cost. Plus, Ryla started to display what I would consider to be his most standout trait, which was his adaptability. Once I started using anti-magic, Ryla realized that Enslaved Mind wasn't going to work and abandoned it immediately. I started using nether darts, but then he started bringing in air mages to cast Aerofend, rendering the darts basically useless. From then on, the war basically turned into Ryla using all kinds of big spells and basically every kind, and me just barely managing to fight him off. Usually, though, this was using liberal amounts of Long Dead, and he used water and air alterations like Fog Warriors and Quickness and a few others I don't remember, and he used them to capture... and he used the thrones he captured from me to recruit fire mages who rained all kinds of hell with fire evocations. I used small communions to ambush my armies with Earthquake, which always managed to kill hundreds of undead and usually a few good mages. A few times he used summons of his own. I remember a particularly tricky point when he had a bunch of griffins who he buffed with various alterations combined with Gift of Health. They were really freaking hard to kill. He used Star Children as mage killers, both on and off the battlefield, and as assassins and magic duelers. He had tons of globals with varying degrees of annoyance. I also heard from Ermor that he had Tartarians and death mages who cast Control Dead or whatever it's called. But I'm very happy this was not used against me. Suffice it to say, he had a lot of variety in attacks. Ultimately, I had a lot of trouble with magic variety. For the most part, my magic revolved around death and astral. I only had token amounts of air, water, and nature, though admittedly communions helped out with that. Ryla, on the other hand, seemed to basically have everything but blood. My decisions regarding my god also started biting me in the butt. I didn't have enough money or time to recruit large amounts of sacreds anymore, and the ones I already had all died in the Eastern campaign, so my blessing was useless. While D9 was helpful for casting spells, the N9 was worthless now because I had no nature income, and because my god was immobile and he couldn't help on the battlefield. While he had provided some much-needed variety and oomph, in retrospective I could have done more with taking a more mobile god and given him astral and maybe some earth or fire along with death. Overall, the war was basically a stalemate. I could never fully trump Ryla on the field or launch a major counter-offensive, but I could always replace my losses, and he couldn't bring enough numbers to effectively besiege my forts. I think, though, that the main thing holding Ryla off from killing me was that he had actually had nothing to do with me. Number one was Ermor. If Ryla had been able to bring larger numbers of his own, I may have been screwed. He just couldn't hold the land he took because his own armies were too small, and he couldn't afford to take many losses in comparison to mine. He could and regularly did kill my armies at a 5-to-1 ratio, but it didn't matter because I could summon hundreds of new undead every turn, while he could probably have made it work. He could probably have made it work. Okay. I'm going to skip through some of this to the end. Throughout the war, I was fairly consistently in contact with Ermor. Naturally, since we were fighting the same enemy. We shared notes, traded gems, items, etc. I think Ermor believed I double-crossed him at one point, because I remember that for 25 turns or so into my war with Ryla, he was surprised that I was still fighting. I guess he thought that I had made peace and was funding death gems to Ermor. To be fair, his scouts probably didn't see that a lot of territory was changing hands, and since I had been hurt so badly, it was reasonable for him to believe that I would sue for peace. Regardless, though, there wasn't much that we could do to directly help each other, but I like to think that I helped keep Ermor alive by just being there. Based on what I was hearing now, Ermor was kicking some serious ass throughout the game with those quad-blessed sacreds and didn't need my help. But who knows, maybe if Ryla wasn't losing troops, mages, and gems against me, then he would have been able to break through against Ermor. That's basically that. Once the stalemate was fully set in, Ryla and I basically spent the rest of the game in that stalemate, with no dramatic change in either side. So that's the last of the Let's Play summaries, or the after-action reviews from the players. And thank you so much, guys, to Sceleria, who was up here in this portion of the map. I forget exactly which one. Here's his capital. So thanks so much to Sceleria for sending in his after action review, and thank you to Ryla, and thank you to both of you for playing and everyone else. And this is the last episode, and I know some of you who've been watching the whole time, you've been watching for months, as we had been playing the game for months. So thanks so much, and I hope everyone has a great time. And I hope you all pick up Dominions and actually play it in multiplayer. Good luck.